Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Became the Void Dragon Emperor. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Issei Hyoudou stood in a clearing, pounding a tree with frantic, exaggerated motions until his scraped knuckles stung. He had been training for months in an isolated part of the underworld, pushing his body and mind beyond their limits. The memory of the girls he cared about, Rias, Akino, Asia, and the others had been his motivation. He wanted to protect them and to become stronger for them. Now the months of isolation were over and he was finally returning home. He worried they might have been worried and expected that Rias would scold him, Akino would tease him, and Asia would cry tears of joy. He missed their company and the close bond they shared. As he neared the mansion in Kuo, an unsettling quiet hung over the place. The late afternoon stillness felt wrong. He noticed voices mixing inside, a few familiar, others unfamiliar, and moved silently toward an open window. He heard an unfamiliar deep male voice and then Akino's voice, which sounded different from how he remembered it. When he peered through the window, he saw the group inside talking with three unfamiliar men, and the sight stunned him. Issei's chest tightened and his heart pounded with disbelief and pain. He had expected to return to laughter and warmth, not this confusing scene. In the back of his mind, Drake reacted with raw anger at the apparent betrayal, reminding Issei of all he had done to protect those people. Issei's thoughts became a tangled storm of anger, sorrow, and confusion. He could not bear to stay and turned away from the window, retreating into the forest. Two sets of eyes followed him from afar. Koneko and Sona had slipped into the shadows to follow, both concerned. Sona noted that Issei looked completely broken and admitted that she had suspected something was off with the others. Koneko tightened her fists and felt guilt gnawing at her. She acknowledged that Issei did not deserve this, and she struggled with regret over how she had treated him in the past. Koneko confessed that she had never told Issei how she felt and that she had been too afraid to risk rejection. Sona reminded her that she had a right to care and that she had not been part of whatever had happened. Issei walked deeper into the woods, each step heavy with the weight of shattered expectations. Every memory of their shared battles and sacrifices felt tainted. He told himself in his head that this had destroyed him, but Drake's voice urged him to stay strong and not let the pain consume him. Issei could not think clearly and only knew he had to get away from the scene. Koneko and Sona kept a respectful distance as they followed, determined not to let him vanish into his own darkness but unsure of what words would help. The forest held its quiet around them, and Issei's footsteps carried him onward, each one laden with the ache of broken trust and uncertain hope. Koneko's usually calm demeanor was shattered by the sight of Issei in obvious distress. She had never seen him so broken. Sona's voice was quiet as she insisted that they could not let him go on like this, eyes narrowing. Koneko nodded slowly, her heart aching. She had never told Issei how much he meant to her. She had always stayed quiet, too afraid to get close after how she had treated him when they first met. Now, watching him hurt like this, she regretted every moment of silence. Issei walked on, Drake's voice softly echoing in his mind as a steady presence. Drake offered to listen whenever Issei wanted to talk. Issei thought bitterly that there was nothing left to say. He felt betrayed and could not find the words. Drake acknowledged the betrayal and reminded Issei that he had always fought for what he believed in. Issei's thoughts circled in anger and sorrow as he imagined Rias and Akino with those men. He clenched his fists, the memory stoking the fire of his hurt. Then Koneko's soft voice reached him and he stopped. Koneko stood a few feet away, her usual stoic face marred by uncertainty. Beside her, Sona watched with arms crossed, unreadable expression but attentive eyes. Koneko admitted that they had followed him because they could not leave him alone after what had happened. Issei's voice remained flat as he asked what they were doing there, betraying none of the storm inside him. Koneko hesitated, ears twitching nervously, and explained that they had seen everything, the betrayal, and that they had suspected something was off for a while. Sona added that the betrayal was unforgivable. Issei's chest tightened. The confirmation made the wound feel more real. He turned away and said that there was nothing they could say to make it better, that he did not want to talk. Koneko took a tentative step forward, struggling to find the right words. She told him she knew she had not always been kind to him, that when they first met she had pushed him away and treated him like he did not matter, but that he did matter to her. Issei shook his head and insisted she did not need to apologize, blaming himself instead and saying he had not been enough for them. Kaneko's heart clenched at his defeat. She corrected him firmly, telling him he had always been more than enough and that those who left him were the ones who could not see his worth. She added that she did see it. Sona nodded and agreed that Issei had always given everything to those girls and that their betrayal did not make him weak, it showed their blindness. Issei listened, unsure how to respond, wounded and wary of believing anyone. Koneko admitted she should have told him how she felt a long time ago, that she had been scared he did not feel the same and scared she did not deserve him after her past mistakes. Issei reacted with surprise and asked what she meant. Koneko gathered her courage and confessed that she cared for him more than she had let on, more than just a friend. She explained that she had hidden her feelings because she did not think he would want someone like her after what she had done. Sona softened her tone and reminded Issei that Koneko was not the only one who saw his worth, that he had always been a good person who fought for those he cared about and that he should not let the day's events make him doubt himself. Issei admitted he did not know if he could trust anyone after being betrayed. Koneko stepped closer and gently rested a hand on his arm, assuring him that not everyone had betrayed him and that she and Sona were still there. Issei looked at her hand and felt a small but grounding warmth. He acknowledged that he did not have to trust anyone right away, and Koneko promised. They were not going anywhere. For the first time since the betrayal, Issei felt a flicker of something other than pain, a small hopeful spark that was enough to keep him standing and moving forward. Later, Issei's body slumped to the ground, and Koneko and Sona froze. Koneko rushed to his side and knelt, gently shaking him as he lay unconscious with shallow breathing and a pale face. Sona placed a hand on Koneko's shoulder and urged calm, determined that they would figure out what to do. Koneko gripped Issei's hand, heart pounding, and demanded an explanation from Drake, whose usual glow came faintly from the boosted gear on Issei's arm. Drake admitted frustration. He could not reach Issei. He described Issei as if trapped somewhere deep inside his own mind and confessed he did not know why. Koneko reminded Drake that he was always connected to Issei. Drake sighed and acknowledged that something different was happening now, and he could not explain what it was. An observer noted that this was something different, a force even they did not recognize, and admitted they did not know what was happening to him. Inside Issei's mind, everything was dark. There was no light or warmth, only an overwhelming cold dread. The air was thick with unsettling sounds, whispers, distant growls, and roars that suggested creatures just out of sight. Issei wondered where he was as his voice echoed in the void with no answer. He felt as if he were walking through a nightmare. Shadows moved around him, swirling and shifting as if they had a life of their own. The darkness then seemed to solidify, and a figure emerged. A towering dragon with vampiric features, bat-like wings, and eyes glowing a deep crimson. Her scales shimmered in black and red, and her presence was both terrifying and strangely familiar. Velgrana introduced herself as the dragon-vampire hybrid who had been waiting for him. Issei stared up at her in shock and asked who she was. Velgrana lowered her head, revealing long fangs, but her gaze held no malice, only a strange familiarity. She explained that she had been watching and waiting for the moment he would be ready to unlock a deeper power within him. She told him that although he had been bound by the boosted gear and Draig's influence, there was more to him than he realized. When Issei questioned why she would appear now, Velgrana answered that he was at his lowest. She said the betrayal he had suffered had shattered him and that from that brokenness true power could emerge. She declared that he was no longer bound by ties that held him back and that he could harness her strength, the strength of the Void Fang Dragon. Issei reacted with disbelief at the name and asked whether that was the name of her sacred gear. Velgrana confirmed that it was the Void Fang Dragon, a fusion of vampiric and draconic energy capable of draining enemy power and magic. She explained that it was a power of darkness, and that it was now linked to him. Issei swallowed hard and asked what would happen to Drake. Velgrana reassured him that Drake would remain with him and that they would work together. Though their strengths differed, Drake had boosted potential, while her strength leaned toward consuming enemies' power. She told him that he was her host now and that for the moment he should rest. When he awoke, the world would look different. Issei awoke with a sharp gasp, his heart racing as he sat up. The first thing he noticed was the change in his left arm. The boosted gear had transformed. Koneko and Sona were at his side, relief evident on their faces as they saw him move. Koneko reacted with surprise at the change, and Sona stepped closer, narrowing her eyes in curiosity. Issei looked at his arm and felt his breath catch. The boosted gear had become darker, almost black, with intricate green and red markings glowing along its surface. A large, glowing red orb pulsed ominously at its center. Drake's voice in his mind sounded surprised and said that this was not his doing, that it was something far older. Velgrana's voice also echoed softly in his thoughts and reminded him that things would never be the same. Issei stood still, staring at the new form of his sacred gear and feeling the weight of Velgrana's words. Koneko and Sona exchanged concerned glances. Sona kept her eyes on the transformed boosted gear and questioned what had happened to him, noting that this power was not solely Drake's. Issei closed his eyes for a moment and then, encouraged by Velgrana's insistence that the others deserved to know, explained that it was not just Drake anymore and that another dragon named Velgrana was inside him. Koneko reacted with astonishment and examined the new markings, noting an unfamiliar, dark energy in the air. Issei confirmed that Velgrana had identified herself as a hybrid, a dragon and a vampire dormant within the boosted gear until the right moment. He added that she had chosen him as her host. Sona considered the situation and noted that a dragon-vampire hybrid was rare even among mythical beings. Issei admitted he did not have much choice and that Velgrana had said she had waited for him to reach a low point. His voice faltered as the memory of the recent betrayal remained raw. Koneko bit her lip, feeling the weight of guilt. The group adjusted to the realization that Issei's power had shifted, and the uncertainty of what would follow settled over them as they prepared for the changes to come. Koneko wanted to reach out to Issei, to tell him how much she regretted pushing him away, but she knew it was not the time. Drake's voice echoed from the boosted gear, sounding weaker than usual. He said he could feel it too and that Velgrana's presence was strong and unlike anything he had encountered. Sona raised an eyebrow and asked if Velgrana could speak and whether she could ask her some questions. Velgrana replied that she could speak when she chose but preferred to remain in the shadows for now, since there were things Issei needed to understand before she revealed herself fully. Sona noted this with suspicion but agreed that they would have to trust Issei's judgment. Koneko could not hold back any longer. She stepped forward, voice soft and trembling, and apologized to Issei for everything, admitting she should have told him the truth sooner and that she had been scared of losing him. Issei turned to her, feeling his heart ache as he saw the regret in her eyes, and he admitted that he did not know what to say. Koneko looked down with her ears pressed back and said she knew she did not deserve anything from him after how she had treated him, but that she cared about him and always had. Before Issei could respond, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the air. The dark aura from the boosted gear intensified and his vision blurred. Sona called his name as the world around him shifted. Issei found himself back in the dark void where Velgrana had first appeared, only this time the atmosphere felt even more oppressive and the shadows swirled violently. Velgrana emerged from the darkness with crimson eyes gleaming and asked rhetorically if they were back so soon. Issei clenched his fists at the raw power coursing through him and demanded to know what was happening and why everything was changing so quickly. Velgrana explained that he was undergoing a transformation, that his body and soul were adjusting to the presence of two dragons, Drake's power and hers, and that it would take time for his body to adapt. Issei narrowed his eyes and asked if he was supposed to just sit back and let it happen, questioning whether he could control it. Velgrana responded that control would come with time, but for now he had to learn to embrace the power he had been given, because it would make him stronger than he imagined. Issei insisted that he had not asked for this and had not asked to be anyone's host. Velgrana said she understood but that fate sometimes chose people whether they liked it or not, and that he had always been destined for greatness even if he did not realize it. When he asked what the next step was and how to use the power, Velgrana told him he had to learn to balance Draeg's power with hers to unlock the full potential of the Void Fang Dragon, and warned that the power came at a cost. There was a darker aspect of her that hungered for energy. Issei reacted with alarm and began to ask if that meant he would have to do something extreme. Velgrana confirmed that there would come a time when he would need to draw energy from his enemies, but for now his focus should be on mastering the balance between light and dark. Determined, Issei clenched his fists and resolved to do whatever it took to control the power and not let it consume him. Velgrana acknowledged this and indicated that they would begin training now. Back in the real world, Issei's eyes snapped open and he stood slowly, feeling lighter but more powerful. The darkness of Velgrana's power lingered, yet he felt in control. Sona and Koneko stared, sensing the change in his energy. Sona asked cautiously if he was okay. Issei nodded and said he felt better than fine, noticing that the boosted gear now pulsed with both Draeg's familiar power and Velgrana's darker energy. He declared that he was stronger now and intended to figure out how to use the power for something good. Koneko felt a swell of hope at the fire returning to Issei's eyes and thought that perhaps things could still be salvaged. In his mind, however, Velgrana's presence warned him that power always came with a price. The atmosphere around the group remained heavy with unspoken words. Koneko and Sona exchanged worried glances as Issei stood composed but radiating an aura darker than before. Velgrana's presence continued to settle within him, and she told him he was adapting quickly while warning that the power would continue to grow and with it the dangers. Issei glanced at Koneko and began to address what she had said earlier, trailing off as he searched for the right words. Kaneko's heart pounded as she stepped forward and admitted she did not deserve his forgiveness but wanted to help and would remain by his side. Issei's gaze softened and he said they would figure it out, but for the moment he needed to focus because there was still so much he did not understand about Velgrana's power. Sona, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward with resolve and reminded Issei that he was not alone. He was part of important underworld factions, the Citri clan would support him, and she would as well. Issei thanked her but said this was something he needed to deal with on his own first, not wanting to drag anyone else into the situation, his words faltering as memories of betrayal surfaced. Sona placed a hand on his shoulder and told him he could not shut people out, that they were stronger together and that they would support him and not let him fall. For a moment, Issei allowed himself to take comfort in Sona's words. It had been a long time since he had felt he could trust anyone. But even with her reassurance, there was a storm brewing inside him, one that only Velgrana could help him navigate. Draeg's voice boomed from within the boosted gear, warning his partner that something was coming. Issei's eyes widened as the air around them crackled with a sinister energy. He could feel a dark, malevolent force approaching. Kaneko's ears twitched as she sensed the same power. Sona adjusted her glasses and warned that it was not friendly and that they needed to be ready. A shadowed figure emerged from the treeline, its shape shrouded in darkness. The energy it emitted felt suffocating, wrapping around the group like a vice. Issei clenched his fists, the boosted gear glowing fiercely, and told the others to stay behind him, his voice cold and protective. Even while he still struggled to trust anyone, he refused to let them be harmed. The figure stepped forward, revealing a humanoid form draped in dark, tattered robes. Its eyes glowed a sickly green and a twisted smile spread across its face as it fixed its gaze on Issei. The attacker hissed that this was the host of both the Red Dragon Emperor and the Void Fang Dragon and that it had been waiting for this moment. Issei demanded to know who he was. The figure replied that names were irrelevant to creatures like them and that it had come to test the rumor of Issei's destructive power. Velgrana warned him that the attacker was dangerous and that his energy was similar to hers. Issei's heart raced and he asked what the figure wanted. The figure declared that it wanted to see him break. The attacker lunged forward with impossibly fast movements. Issei barely had time to react as he summoned the boosted gear and Draeg urged a surge of power, amplifying his strength. The clash sent shockwaves through the air, forcing Sona and Koneko to take cover behind a nearby tree. Koneko called his name with worry. Issei gritted his teeth as he pushed back against the figure's overwhelming force, but the more he fought the more the attacker seemed to grow stronger. Velgrana warned urgently that he was losing. control, and that he needed to tap into her power to survive. Issei hesitated for a split second, reluctant to rely on Velgrana after everything that had happened, but he could not afford to refuse. He asked Velgrana for her strength. As soon as he did, a surge of dark energy erupted from the boosted gear and mixed with Draig's power, overwhelming and throwing the figure back several meters. The air around Issei crackled with an intense energy as the boosted gear manifested Velgrana's void fang on his arm. The figure staggered to its feet, acknowledging with grim interest that the rumors had been true. Issei felt the raw power coursing through him stronger than before, but with an unsettling cost as the darkness inside him strengthened. He ordered the figure to leave at once. The attacker issued a warning that their next encounter would not be so forgiving, then dissolved into the shadows. Issei exhaled sharply and tried to steady himself, though a lingering dread remained. Sona and Koneko rushed to his side, concern written across their faces. Sona scanned him for injuries and asked if he was okay. Issei nodded, though his body felt heavier than before. Velgrana's caution echoed in his mind that this had only been the beginning and that other forces would come for him, so he would need to be prepared. Sona approached cautiously and observed that the power he had gained was unstable and could not be allowed to take control. Issei acknowledged that he understood the risk but insisted that, for now, it was his only option for survival. Koneko stepped forward and placed a small hand on his arm, expressing belief that he could learn to control it and offering help. For a brief moment, Issei looked down at Koneko and felt an old stir of trust he had thought shattered by betrayal. Before he could respond, Velgrana reminded him that he had only scratched the surface of what she could offer and warned that the line between power and madness was thin. Issei accepted the warning internally and understood the danger, but also recognized that his path forward required this power for the time being. Sona proposed that they return to Kuo Academy to regroup and investigate who the attacker had been, noting that there was more going on than random battles. Issei agreed but insisted that they proceed his way and that there be no more secrets. Sona hesitated briefly and then agreed. The walk back to Kuo Academy was quiet and tense. Koneko stayed close to Issei, her presence small but comforting. As they neared the academy gates, Issei's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from Rias requesting a meeting at the Occult Research Club room the next day and saying she knew she had hurt him but that there was more to the situation. He stared at the message, anger and conflicting emotions swirling through him. Sona noticed his dark expression and asked what was wrong. Issei told her it was Rias and that she wanted to talk as if nothing had happened. Koneko glanced at him with concern and asked if he was going to meet her. Issei scoffed and made it clear that he would not meet her and that he was done with them. Velgrana hummed in Issei's mind, approving his decision and urging him to leave the past behind. She thought the others did not deserve him and that he should focus on the path ahead. Issei took a deep breath and resolved that he was moving on, that Rias and the others could deal with their own problems while he faced bigger concerns. Sona softened her gaze and gave a small, understanding nod, telling him that he deserved better and that the Citri clan would be there if he ever needed help handling the others. Issei appreciated her words but did not answer. His attention was fixed on the lingering dark energy of the attacker. Whoever that figure had been, it was not the end. More would come. As they entered the academy grounds, Draig's voice echoed in Issei's head, directed this time at Velgrana. Draig asked what her endgame was and accused her of hiding something. Velgrana chuckled in reply and admitted she was hiding things, suggesting that keeping secrets was part of power and that she would reveal them when the time was right. Draig warned her not to use Issei, insisting that if she planned to exploit him he would not hesitate to oppose her. Velgrana told the ancient dragon to relax and insisted she bore no ill will toward her new host, but she hinted that forces beyond their understanding were at work and that Issei would need her whether he liked it or not. Issei listened quietly, unease creeping into him. Draig's concern was valid. Velgrana's intentions remained unclear, but for now he had little choice but to trust her. Later that night Issei sat alone in his room staring at the boosted gear on his arm. The red glow had dimmed, but Velgrana's presence remained constant. Velgrana urged him to stop overthinking and to let go of the past, reminding him that he had gained a power few could imagine and that he should use it. Issei closed his eyes and let the day's exhaustion wash over him, knowing there was no returning to how things had been. He still wondered what he might become if he embraced the new power fully. Before sleep took him, Drake cautioned him to be careful. He warned that such power always came at a cost. Issei did not reply, but he understood the warning. The next morning brought no relief from the unease. The previous night's confrontation, Velgrana's cryptic words, and Rias's message pressed on his mind. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, then sat up and rubbed his temples. Velgrana told him that he could not avoid his past forever and that running from it would only weaken his future. He needed to face it head-on. Issei grimaced, thinking that it was easy for a dragon to advise him after being betrayed by people he had trusted. He stood, dressed, and glanced at the boosted gear once more as the red and green glow flickered, a reminder of the power and its burden. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Sona stood in the doorway with a serious expression and said that they needed to talk. She had been investigating the figure from the previous night and believed it to be a servant of a rogue faction within the Cow's Brigade. She explained that she could not confirm the details yet, but the energy matched that of a group they had been monitoring and that the faction was dangerous. If they were targeting him, it meant they knew about Velgrana. Issei, curiosity piqued, stepped aside to let her in and asked what she thought their motive was. Sona's sharp gaze and adjusted glasses conveyed that she suspected they wanted Velgrana's power for themselves and that they would not stop until they either possessed it or destroyed him. The Citri clan was mobilizing resources, but he needed to prepare as well. Issei felt his jaw tighten. He was tired of being hunted. He resolved that he would not let people keep coming after him and that if they wanted a fight he would give them one. Velgrana chuckled in his mind, pleased by his determination and thinking that he was beginning to act like a true host. Sona smiled faintly, but her eyes remained worried, reminding him that strategy would be essential if they were to outmaneuver the Cow's Brigade faction. Even as Sona spoke of plans and tactics, the message from Rias gnawed at him. He had not replied, and part of him wondered why Rias would reach out after everything that had happened. Velgrana slipped into his thoughts and urged him to forget Rias, to see her as part of his past rather than his future. Issei clenched his fist, conflicted. Velgrana's assessment had merit, but something about Rias's message felt different, as if there was more to the betrayal than he understood. Sona noticed the change in his expression and asked what was troubling him. Issei hesitated, then showed her Rias's message and explained that Rias wanted to talk, but he was uncertain whether he should accept. Sona read the message and noted that Rias was stubborn, but warned that it could be dangerous. If Rias was still aligned with the others, it might be a setup. Issei said he did not think it was a trap. He knew how they operated and the message did not feel like one, yet he could not shake the feeling that Rias might be hiding something. Sona insisted that going to meet Rias would be risky and that he needed to be prepared for anything. Issei acknowledged the risk but felt he had to pursue any chance at answers. Sona softened and told him she would come with him. She argued that if Rias and the others were involved they could not take any chances, and that he did not have to face this alone. Issei stared at her for a moment and then nodded in agreement. Issei steeled himself and resolved to get it over with. Later that day, Issei and Sona made their way to the Occult Research Club room. The hallways of Kuo Academy felt strangely quiet, the usual chatter of students replaced by an uneasy silence. As they approached the clubroom, Issei felt his heart pound. Velgrana whispered in his mind that he should remember his future with her. Issei took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Inside, Rias sat alone with her hands folded on the table. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows across the floor. Rias looked up as Issei and Sona entered, her expression unreadable. Rias thanked Issei for coming and asked him to hear her out. Issei remained standing by the door with his arms crossed and a cold gaze. He demanded to know what Rias wanted. Rias sighed and admitted she did not deserve his forgiveness but asked him to listen because there was more to what had happened than he realized. Issei narrowed his eyes and challenged her claim that there was anything more, accusing them of betrayal and dismissing any excuses. Rias quickly insisted they had not wanted to hurt him and explained that they had been manipulated and had not had a real choice. Issei clenched his fists and demanded clarification. Rias hesitated, glanced at Sona, and then revealed that someone else had been pulling the strings, someone far more dangerous. She said they had thought keeping Issei at a distance would protect him, but they had been wrong. Issei's mind raced at the possibility of a larger conspiracy. Velgrana warned him in his mind that Rias was lying and that he should not trust her. Issei felt tension build and demanded to know who was behind it. Rias bit her lip and, in a voice barely above a whisper, named Azazel as the one working with the Cow's Brigade. The name Azazel hung heavy in the air. Issei reeled at the revelation and found it hard to reconcile that the man who had guided and trained him might be behind their troubles. Issei questioned how he could be expected to believe that Azazel was responsible for all of it. Rias nodded solemnly and said she understood how hard it was to believe, but insisted the evidence showed Azazel had been manipulating events with the Cow's Brigade. Sona listened with an unreadable expression while her fingers tightened around the hem of her skirt. Sona observed that distancing themselves from Issei had left him vulnerable and questioned whether that had been the right call. Rias flinched and explained they had thought they were protecting him because Azazel wanted power, specifically Drake and now Velgrana, and they had believed pushing Issei away would keep him safe. Issei clenched his fists until his knuckles went white and demanded how breaking his heart and betraying him could be called protection. Velgrana again cautioned him in his mind that the others were lying and that Azazel could not control her even if he wanted to. Conflicting thoughts churned through Issei. He wanted to believe Rias, to find an explanation for his pain, but Velgrana's voice planted doubt. Issei asked why he should trust anything they said, suggesting it might be another trick. Rias shook her head desperately and swore it was not a trick, pleading that they had only tried to protect him. Issei stared at her, anger and hurt warring within him, and remembered the day he discovered their betrayal and the mocking laughter that had followed. Sona stepped forward with a sharp, analytical gaze and urged Issei to consider the possibility of the Cow's Brigade's involvement. She said that if Azazel was working with them, they were all in danger and needed to act. Issei gritted his teeth and said he did not care about Azazel's schemes. He cared about what had been done to him and questioned why he should believe anything after being turned away. Rias trembled and revealed that she had deep feelings for him and had always cared for him. The confession struck Issei hard, and for a moment his anger wavered as memories of shared laughter, battles, and warmth surfaced. But the memory of betrayal returned with equal force. Issei scoffed that she did not know the meaning of the word love. Rias flinched but did not back down, admitting to mistakes and insisting she had never stopped caring. Sona placed a hand on Issei's shoulder to steady him and reminded him that the situation was not just about the past, that needed to figure out what was happening now. She emphasized that if the Cow's Brigade was involved, the problem was much bigger. Velgrana murmured in his mind that they were stalling him and that the real threat lay elsewhere. Issei shook his head to clear his thoughts and decided to assume Azazel might be involved. He asked what their next move should be. Rias straightened and asked for his help, explaining they needed to find out what Azazel was planning. She said they had been gathering intelligence on the Cow's Brigade's movements but needed Issei's unique abilities to stop them. Issei narrowed his eyes and asked why he was the one they needed. Rias explained that Velgrana's power was different from anything they had encountered and that if Azazel sought her, it was because he knew she could tip the scales. Velgrana asserted in his mind that she was not just a dragon but a decisive force. Issei refused to be treated like a pawn and made it clear he would become involved only on his own terms. Rias acknowledged his conditions and expressed determination, reiterating that she understood and that they needed him, and that the world needed him. The weight of Rias's words settled on Issei's shoulders. He felt the burden of his new power more than ever, knowing he was no longer just a boy trying to live his life. He was something more, something dangerous. Velgrana urged him quietly to seize the power and warned that others would bend to his will eventually. Issei ignored her. He had no desire to lord his power over anyone and only wanted to make sense of the chaos that had engulfed his life. Issei turned to Sona and asked what she thought. Sona studied him carefully and said they needed to proceed with caution. They could not trust anyone fully, not even Rias, but if there was a chance to stop Azazel and the Cow's Brigade they had to take it. Issei sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and agreed to help, warning Rias that if she lied to him again there would be consequences. Rias nodded and assured him she would not lie to him anymore. As the sun set and they planned to confront Azazel, Issei's mind returned to the figure that had attacked him the night before, identified as part of the Cow's Brigade, and he wondered what Azazel's endgame was and why Velgrana had chosen him as her host. Velgrana told him he would learn in time and that his destiny was greater than he could imagine. Issei gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of those words as his destiny pulled him deeper into a world of danger and deception. The night was thick with tension. The air felt colder than usual as they approached Azazel's stronghold. The mansion loomed dark and foreboding under the moonlight. Sona and Koneko walked beside him, their faces set with determination, and Rias and her group followed closely behind, every one of them on edge. Koneko quietly asked if he was sure. Issei nodded and said they needed answers and that this was the only way. Velgrana warned him that Azazel would be expecting them, but Issei acknowledged he could not simply run from it. As they neared the entrance, dread settled over the group. The heavy doors creaked open and a tall figure stood in the dim light. Azazel stepped forward and greeted Issei in a smooth, casual tone, as if this were a routine meeting rather than an inevitable confrontation. Issei's anger rose and he demanded to know why Azazel had betrayed him. Azazel smirked and explained that everything he had done had been for the greater good, that sometimes sacrifices were necessary. Issei accused him of using and manipulating his friends. Azazel countered that Issei was thinking too small and that this was about power and balance, and that many events had led to this moment. Rias stepped forward, furious, and accused Azazel of using them all and betraying their trust. Azazel shrugged and said trust was dangerous and often a luxury in war. Velgrana urged them to end the exchange and wanted to strike Azazel for what he had done. Issei clenched his fists and said Azazel would not get away with it. Azazel's smirk shifted into seriousness as he declared it was time to see if they could survive the coming storm. The air exploded with energy and figures in dark armor emerged from the shadows. The Cow's Brigade. Sona summoned a barrier to protect them. Issei prepared the boosted gear and called on Draig and Velgrana for power. Draig roared as his strength surged through Issei while Velgrana urged them to fight with cold resolve. The Cow's Brigade charged and the battle opened into intense, stylized combat. Issei moved with purpose, striking the first wave of attackers and sending them flying. Rias and her group fought beside him, their magic lighting the battlefield. Sona's barriers held strong as she coordinated their defense, and Koneko cut through the enemy lines with precise, agile strikes. As they fought, Issei felt the skirmish might be a distraction. Velgrana warned that Azazel was not merely watching but waiting. Realizing it was a trap, Velgrana urged Issei to retreat, but it was too late. Azazel unleashed a massive surge of energy that swept across the battlefield. The force knocked everyone off their feet, and Issei felt the ground disappear beneath him as he was hurled into the air. Sona called his name as the world spun, and then everything went black. When Issei came to, he found himself in a strange, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with ancient symbols, and a heavy, oppressive energy filled the air. Draig's voice sounded groggy in Issei's mind as he wondered where they were. Velgrana informed him that it was a prison and that Azazel had trapped them. Issei's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the situation. He had been played again. Azazel had lured them into a trap, and now they were at his mercy. Issei clenched his fists and resolved that they would find a way out of this place, addressing Velgrana and Draig in his thoughts. Draig expressed a hint of pride and determination, saying they would tear the place apart if they had to. Velgrana warned that this was far from over. Issei nodded, determination burning in his eyes. He was no longer the same boy he had been. He had the power of dragons at his side, and he meant to use it. Silence in the prison cell pressed down on them. Issei sat on the cold stone floor with his back against the wall, gathering his thoughts. The room was dark except for the faint glow of symbols etched into the walls. Draig and Velgrana remained quiet, waiting for him to act. Issei told himself they had to find a way out. The feeling of betrayal still weighed heavily on him. Velgrana's voice echoed in his mind with equal parts frustration and encouragement as she reminded him that the prison could not hold them and that Azazel had underestimated them. Drake added that they had been through worse and reminded Issei who he was, a dragon, not one to stay caged. Issei pushed himself up, answering that they would break out no matter the cost. As he stood, the energy in the room shifted. The oppressive air grew thicker and the ancient symbols began to glow brighter, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Darkness rippled, as if reality itself bent, and a tall, regal figure emerged from the shadows. Her presence was commanding and uncanny, skin pale as the moon, deep crimson eyes that glowed with power, long black hair cascading down her back, and large, bat-like wings spreading from her shoulders. Issei took a step back and raised his guard. He demanded to know who she was, his voice wavering slightly. The woman introduced herself as Ilvana, a hybrid of dragon and vampire, and declared that she had come for him as his new partner. Issei reacted with shock and looked down at his boosted gear in confusion, asking what that meant for Drake. Drake reassured him that he was still present, though his tone carried caution. Velgrana warned with disdain that Ilvana was no ordinary spirit, noting the dangerous mixture of vampire blood and dragon essence. Ilvana explained that she had watched from the shadows and had waited until Issei was ready. She said the world he would face required more than dragon power. It required something darker: cunning, strength, and a willingness to accept the shadows within oneself. She claimed that Issei could wield that power as her host. Issei felt the weight of her words and asked why she had chosen him. Ilvana answered that he was no ordinary candidate. Broken and reforged, he had endured betrayal, loss, and pain and still risen stronger. She told him that she would help him unlock power beyond his imagination. Drake warned that Ilvana was powerful but not like him and that her offer carried danger. Velgrana admitted distrust but agreed that Issei would need every weapon against relentless enemies. Ilvana stepped closer and fixed him with a steady gaze, then paused, leaving a quiet space between them. Issei looked into her eyes and felt the temptation to gain more power to protect his friends and confront those who had betrayed him, but he also sensed that something about the offer was wrong. Ilvana acknowledged that power came at a price. Accepting the darker impulses within: vengeance, a hunger for control, and ruthlessness. She suggested that Issei had held back out of fear and that embracing that side might reveal his true potential. For a moment, Issei hesitated. The power she offered was undeniable, and the thought of never feeling helpless again was tempting. Drake interrupted his thoughts to make it clear that whatever decision Issei made, they were with him. Drake warned Issei that power for power's sake could lead him down a path he might never come back from. Velgrana added in a deadly serious tone that Ilvana was dangerous, but the enemies ahead were dangerous too, and the choice was his. Issei closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, and in that moment he made his choice. He accepted Ilvana's power while promising himself he would not be controlled by it. Ilvana smiled, her eyes brightening, and indicated that they would see how things unfolded. In a flash of crimson light, the strange gear from the picture appeared on Issei's arm and merged with his boosted gear. The new power surged through him, dark and intoxicating, yet held in check. He felt Ilvana's presence within him as strongly as Drake's and Velgrana's. Ilvana's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to show Azazel the consequences of betraying a dragon. Issei opened his eyes with a new fire burning inside. The room around him began to crumble as his newfound power surged. It was time to escape, to confront Azazel, to unleash the dragon's rebirth. As the prison walls fell away, Issei stood in dust and debris, his eyes glowing with the fused crimson and emerald energy of the boosted gear and Ilvana's presence. The chamber shattered like glass, but fear did not touch him, only determination. Drake expressed a mixture of pride and caution at the path Issei had chosen. Velgrana warned that they were in uncharted territory and would not go unnoticed. Issei clenched his fist and vowed that there would be no more hiding or hesitation. With a swift motion he broke through the remaining barrier, sending stone and magic spiraling into the void. The oppressive energy of the prison dispersed as he stepped outside the shattered cell. Beyond lay a vast, twisted labyrinth of shadows and floating structures, Azazel's creation, but Issei's focus was clear. He would confront Azazel. A familiar voice called from behind. Koneko rushed toward him, worry evident as her ears twitched while she took in the destruction and the massive surge of energy they had all felt. Sona followed closely, her brow furrowed as she noted that the aura around Issei felt different. Issei turned to face them. Koniko's usual stoicism had been replaced by real fear, and Sona's strategic mind worked to understand what had changed. Issei explained that he had done what was necessary and that he would not allow Azazel or anyone else to keep them caged. Koneko stepped closer, searching his face, and asked what had happened. Issei admitted that he had made a dangerous deal to help them escape, and reassured her that he was still himself. Koneko, torn between trust and caution, said she worried about what would come next. Sona assessed the fusion of powers in Issei and warned that such strength always carried a price. Issei acknowledged that truth and vowed to pay any cost to protect the people he cared about. The air shifted then. A cold wind swept through the ruined structures, heralding a familiar, malevolent presence. Azazel stepped from the shadows, wings folded behind him and an amused expression on his face. His dark eyes gleamed as he regarded Issei's transformation, intrigued by what he saw. Azazel suggested that he had planned for this outcome, that Issei's breakthrough was part of a larger design meant to push him beyond his limits and place him where Azazel wanted him. Koneko moved to Issei's side, insisting that Azazel could not be trusted. Sona stepped forward, preparing for a possible trap. Issei kept his focus on the fallen angel. Drake cautioned him not to lose his composure and reminded him that Azazel was baiting him. Velgrana growled that the enemy had miscalculated and had underestimated Issei. Ilvana's voice threaded through Issei's mind with a sinister undertone, urging him to display true power. Issei forced himself to remain calm and declared that he would not be a puppet or held back by anyone. His new gear flared to life, bathing the area in crimson and emerald light. The force of his aura made the ground tremble, and cracks spidered beneath his feet as raw energy coursed through him. Azazel's expression shifted to one of cautious interest, and the fallen angel probed whether Issei intended to fight. Issei's expression hardened and he resolved not merely to fight but to end the threat. He lunged forward, his fist charged with the combined might of the boosted gear and the darker energy within him. The air around him crackled as he aimed directly at Azazel. The fallen angel barely dodged, his wings flaring as he avoided the blow by a hair's breadth. The force of the attack sent shockwaves through the ground and shattered nearby structures. Azazel acknowledged Issei's increased strength, his amusement edged now with a hint of caution. Azazel warned that strength alone would not be enough to defeat him. Issei gritted his teeth and launched another barrage of attacks, each punch faster and stronger than the last. His movements were fueled by a mixture of rage and desperation, but there was control now, a deadly precision that had not been there before. Velgrana urged him on fiercely, telling him to keep pushing, and Drake added that Azazel was faster but not stronger, advising him to focus and stay calm. Ilvana's laughter echoed in his mind, a dark, insistent voice urging the Dragon Emperor to crush his foe and demonstrate true power. Issei produced one final burst of energy and unleashed a devastating blow that connected with Azazel's chest. The force of the impact sent the fallen angel crashing through several walls. His wings flailed as he struggled to regain control. For a moment there was silence. Issei stood breathing heavily, his body still crackling with energy. Koneko and Sona watched him in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. Koneko asked in a barely audible whisper whether he had gotten him, but Issei did not answer, his gaze fixed on the rubble where Azazel had landed. He felt it. Azazel was not finished. From the shadows a low chuckle echoed across the ruined landscape. Azazel emerged from the debris. His clothes were torn and his face marked by the fight, but his eyes gleamed with dangerous intent. He conceded that Issei had done well and warned that the real game was only beginning. The tension hung heavy in the air, thick as smoke. Azazel's mocking presence lingered, but Issei paid it no mind. His body buzzed with power and his mind felt clearer than it had in a long time. Amidst the chaos, a different kind of clarity surfaced in his heart. He looked at Sona and Koneko standing by his side, their expressions a mixture of concern and determination. They had not left him even when things seemed hopeless. In the face of betrayal and overwhelming odds, They had stayed unwavering. The feeling in his chest was not from the battle. It was deeper, something he had pushed aside for too long. He had always valued his friends, but this felt different. Issei took a deep breath and, with a softer but firm voice, told Sona and Koneko that he needed to say something before they went any further. Kaneko's cat ears twitched as she glanced up at him, curiosity in her amber eyes. Sona adjusted her glasses, sensing the change in his tone and preparing to focus on tactical concerns, but Issei interrupted to make it clear this was about them. He admitted that he had been thinking about this for a while and had never had the courage to speak, but after everything that had happened he could not hold it in any longer. Koneko tilted her head, her expression softening as she asked what he was trying to say. Issei met her gaze first and acknowledged that she had been by his side through everything, even when she could have walked away. He confessed that he cared for her more than he had expected. Kaneko's cheeks flushed and her tail swayed nervously. She asked if he truly meant it. Issei affirmed his sincerity and said he wanted to give them a chance if she felt the same. Koneko bit her lip, eyes wide with surprise and emotion, and indicated that she had felt similarly for a long time and would like that. Issei's spirits lifted, but he continued, turning to Sona and explaining that she had also supported him when she did not have to, pushing him to be better, to think and act with purpose. He admitted that he had developed feelings for her as well and wanted to be honest. He asked if she would give them a chance, acknowledging uncertainty but wanting openness. Sona blinked, taken aback, her mind racing to process the confession. Then she offered a rare, genuine smile, acknowledging Issei's recklessness but admiring his honesty. She agreed to give it a try and made it clear she would not let him slack off. Issei chuckled, feeling a weight lift from his chest. Koneko stepped closer and smirked slightly, observing that they were in it together now, and Sona confirmed the new arrangement with another composed smile. A fragile peace settled over them despite the surrounding chaos, but it was short-lived. Azazel interrupted with scornful laughter that echoed through the ruins, mocking the moment and reminding them he was still present. Issei hardened his expression and stated that he had said what he needed to say and was ready to finish the fight. Azazel spread his dark wings wide and challenged him to see whether Issei's new power would be enough. Koneko and Sona moved to Issei's side and their power flared in tandem, preparing them to face the next phase of the conflict. Kaneko's fists crackled with energy and Sona's magic formed intricate sigils around her hands. Sona assured Issei that he was not facing Azazel alone, her voice calm but filled with resolve. Koneko added that they were in it together, her usual stoicism replaced by determination. Issei nodded, feeling not only the power surging through him but also the strength of the bonds he had formed with the people he cared about. He affirmed that together they would take Azazel down. Azazel's smirk never faltered as he watched them standing united against him. The fallen angel's wings beat once, creating a gust of wind that swept across the battlefield. His dark aura flared, crackling with malevolent energy, but there was something different about Issei now, something that made Azazel's confidence seem misplaced. Issei's eyes gleamed with determination as he clenched his fist and declared that they had come too far to back down and that he was done letting people like Azazel control him. Azazel taunted them, spreading his wings wide and questioning whether the three of them could stand against him. Issei's new gear pulsed with energy, a mixture of crimson, emerald, and dark shadows swirling around him. The bond he now shared with Velgrana and Ilvana gave him strength, and more than that, he trusted Koneko and Sona beside him. He stated with conviction that they were stronger together and that Azazel was about to find out why. Koneko stepped forward, her fists glowing with her own ki and her eyes locked on Azazel. She affirmed that Azazel had underestimated them and that he would not get away with using them as pawns anymore. Sona's magical circles expanded around her, glowing with runes and symbols, and she explained that they were not just fighting for themselves but for each other, something Azazel would never understand. Azazel chuckled darkly and challenged their bond. Without warning, Azazel launched himself into the air, his wings cutting through the wind as he dove toward them. Black lightning crackled in his hands as he summoned his immense power, aiming it straight at Issei. Koneko warned them to look out and jumped in front of Issei, her small frame glowing with defensive energy. Issei was ready. He moved his fist forward, his gear reacting instantly as the crimson glow erupted, and he channeled both Draig's and Velgrana's power. With a roar, he released a torrent of energy that clashed with Azazel's dark lightning in midair. The impact sent shockwaves across the battlefield, but Issei held his ground, the newfound power in his gear allowing him to push back harder than ever before. Draig urged Issei in his mind to seize the chance and unleash everything, and Velgrana added telepathically that they should show Azazel the strength of their bond. Issei gritted his teeth and pushed even harder, declaring that this was for everything Azazel had done. The surge of energy finally overwhelmed Azazel's attack, shattering his dark lightning and sending the fallen angel spiraling backward through the air. He barely managed to right himself, hovering above them in a mixture of shock and fury. Azazel muttered in disbelief that it seemed impossible that a human could do this. Sona stepped up beside Issei, her magic flaring even brighter, and she reminded Azazel that he had made the mistake of thinking they were just individuals. Together, they were unstoppable. Koneko leapt into the air with a burst of speed and struck Azazel, her fists glowing with ki as she landed a solid hit to his midsection. Azazel grunted and stumbled as Koneko flipped back to the ground, landing gracefully next to Issei and Sona. Azazel growled that they were pests and questioned whether they could defeat him. Issei felt the presence of Draig and Velgrana pushing him forward. Ilvana's dark energy swirled within him, amplifying the power he already wielded. Velgrana urged him to finish the fight and end Azazel, and Issei nodded, his eyes fixed on the fallen angel as he declared that it was over and that Azazel had lost. He could feel Sona and Koneko beside him, their energy syncing with his. Together, they were unstoppable. Issei raised his hand as the power within him reached its peak and announced that his attack was for every life Azazel had tried to manipulate and every person he had hurt. Azazel had barely time to react before Issei unleashed a devastating beam of energy, a fusion of Draig's fire, Velgrana's darkness, and Ilvana's cold resolve. The beam tore through the air, too fast for Azazel to dodge. The impact was explosive but non-graphic. Azazel was overwhelmed by the attack and vanished in a brilliant flash of light. When the light faded, Azazel was nowhere to be seen and the battlefield fell silent. Issei lowered his hand, panting heavily as the power within him slowly receded. He glanced at Koneko and Sona, who were both breathing hard but still standing. Koneko admitted softly that it was over, sounding relieved, and Sona, adjusting her glasses, acknowledged that they had done it. Issei felt his legs like jelly but smiled and said that they had done it together. He looked at Koneko and then at Sona, his heart swelling with gratitude and a deep appreciation for their support. They had not only fought with him but had fought for him and stood by him when no one else had. The battlefield lay quiet now, the oppressive tension of Azazel's presence gone, leaving behind only the faint hum of magical energy in the air. Issei stood tall despite his exhaustion, with Koneko and Sona by his side. The three of them had just achieved something that had seemed impossible moments before, and the true weight of their victory was beginning to sink in. Issei wiped the sweat from his brow and admitted quietly that he still could not quite believe they had actually done it. Koneko nodded, a mixture of relief and satisfaction on her face, a subtle smile emerging despite her usual reserve. Sona's sharp eyes scanned the battlefield for any potential threats as she adjusted her glasses. She pointed out that Azazel had been strong but that the fight might have consequences and that they should regroup and assess the situation. Issei realized she was right and acknowledged that although the battle was over, the ripple effects of taking down someone as powerful as Azazel would likely have serious repercussions. But for now, all he could feel was an overwhelming sense of relief. Issei told Koneko and Sona that they would deal with whatever came next, but first he needed to say something to both of them. Koneko and Sona turned toward him, their eyes focused intently. Issei took a deep breath to calm the nerves fluttering in his chest. The battle had been the easy part. This was far more difficult. Issei explained that he had spent a lot of time thinking and that, through everything that had happened, he no longer wanted to face things alone. Sona arched an eyebrow and asked what he was trying to say. Koneko's ears twitched as she listened closely, curiosity filling her expression. Feeling their attention, Issei pressed on, determined to express what had been building inside him. Issei confessed. that he had fallen for both of them and that he cared about Koneko and Sona, and he had decided he could no longer ignore those feelings. Sona's eyes widened in surprise as she tried to process what he had admitted. Kaneko's cheeks flushed as she asked if he truly meant it. Issei nodded firmly and made clear that he did mean it. He acknowledged that it might be sudden, but he could no longer stay silent. They both meant a great deal to him, and he would like to give their relationship a chance if they were willing. For a long moment there was silence. Koneko and Sona exchanged a look, sharing an unspoken understanding. Sona stepped forward and offered a small, genuine smile, mentioning that Issei had always been bold and that she was willing to see where this could lead if he was serious. Koneko smiled and agreed, saying she had cared for him for a long time and wanted to see what happened next. Issei felt a weight lift from his shoulders and warmth spread through his chest. He thanked them and promised he would not let them down. Koneko moved closer and gently touched his arm, noting that he never disappointed. Sona crossed her arms and reminded him that expectations and responsibilities would remain unchanged, and he would still need to keep up with his duties. Issei laughed and promised he would not slack off, especially with both of them around to keep him in line. Standing together, their bond felt solidified and a renewed sense of purpose filled Issei's heart. He was not alone anymore. Koneko and Sona stood by him, not just as allies but in a deeper way, and together they could face whatever came. Later, as they began to make their way back to the others, the sky above cleared and the oppressive clouds that had hung over the battlefield dissipated. The sun peeked through and cast a warm, golden light over the land. Koneko asked what they should do next. Issei glanced at Sona and then at Koneko, and said they should keep moving forward. There was still much to figure out, but as long as they stuck together they could handle whatever came their way. Sona adjusted her glasses with a small smirk and agreed they should prepare for whatever happened next. Rias could not sit still. She paced in front of the grand doors to Surzek's private office, running her fingers through her crimson hair as she tried to compose herself. Her heart pounded with a mix of anxiety and anger. Things had not turned out the way she expected. Issei had been meant to remain loyal to her alone, and she felt he had drifted since returning from his training. Rias told herself she had a plan. If she could convince Surzek that Issei was being unfaithful, she could turn others against him. She knocked once and, without second-guessing, pushed the door open. Surzek sat behind his mahogany desk and, seeing Rias distressed, asked what was going on and noted that she looked upset. Rias swallowed and, with a trembling voice, told him that it was Issei and that she had caught him cheating on her and on the other girls. Her voice broke as she forced tears to her eyes to make the story believable. Surzek frowned and questioned whether she was sure, reminding her that Issei had always been faithful and had fought and sacrificed for them. Rias let her frustration show and insisted that everything had changed since his return, that he had been sneaking around and seeing other women behind their backs, and that she had witnessed it herself. Surzek's concern for his sister took over and he declared that he could not ignore such accusations. He rose from his desk and called for Grafia. Within moments, the silver-haired maid appeared, alert and serious. Surzek instructed Grafia to find Issei Hyoudou and bring him immediately for questioning. Grafia bowed and disappeared. Rias exhaled slowly, feeling a hint of satisfaction. She believed that soon Issei would be forced to answer for his supposed betrayal and that everything would return to how she thought it should be. All that remained was to wait. Issei had been resting with Koneko and Sona near the edge of the school grounds after a sparring session, but he could not shake a nagging unease that had followed him since his return from training. The relationships he had once cherished felt hollow, except for the companionship of Koneko and Sona. Just as he was about to voice his concerns, Grafia appeared before them. Grafia, composed and efficient, informed Issei that Surzek had requested his presence and that he must come at once. Issei blinked in surprise. Grafia inclined her head and waited for him to respond, and Issei rose to go with her. Grafia did not answer, simply motioning for him to follow. Issei exchanged a glance with Sona and Koneko, who both looked equally confused but concerned. Sona said softly that they would wait there for him, her eyes narrowing with unease. With a nod, Issei followed Grafia, his mind racing with questions about what Surzek wanted and whether it had anything to do with Rias. The nagging feeling in his chest grew stronger as they approached the meeting hall. The confrontation. When Issei entered the meeting chamber, he felt every pair of eyes lock onto him. Rias and Surzex were present, along with Rias's parents, Lord and Lady Gremory, and several other familiar faces. The tension in the room was thick and suffocating. Surzex stood at the center of the room, his usually calm expression marked by disappointment as he informed Issei that Rias had come to him with troubling news, accusing him of being unfaithful to her and the others. Issei reacted with sharp disbelief, insisting he would never betray them. Rias rose from her seat, fists clenched, and accused him vehemently, claiming she had seen him sneaking around with other women and betraying their trust. Issei vehemently denied the accusation, insisting that Rias knew him better than that and pleading for an explanation. Before the argument could continue, Sona and Koneko arrived, having followed closely behind. Koneko moved to Issei's side and glared at Rias, declaring that Issei had done nothing wrong and had been loyal to them. Sona stepped forward and calmly pointed out that the accusation did not add up, reminding everyone that Issei had been with them for most of the time since his return from training. The room erupted into heated debate, with Rias pressing her claims while Koneko and Sona defended Issei. The voices grew louder until an enormous, overwhelming presence filled the chamber. The arrival of Great Red. The air seemed to tremble and the room itself felt small beneath the weight of an ancient power as the crimson form of Great Red manifested. His enormous presence commanded immediate silence. His booming voice quieted the bickering as he announced that he had been watching for a long time. Even Surzex appeared humbled before the Dragon of Dragons. Surzex addressed the dragon with a respectful but wary question about his purpose. Great Red replied that he had come to give Issei something he had earned, the dragon pieces. Rias protested loudly, questioning why a gift would be given to someone she labeled a cheater. Great Red turned his fury on Rias, accusing her of having allowed Issei to die during a crucial moment. The revelation stunned everyone. Great Red then offered to reveal the truth. Issei gave his consent for the dragon to show the memories. A red light filled the room as the dragon's power unfolded Issei's memories, his sacrifices, his loyalty, the moments of danger he endured, and the critical hesitation that had occurred when help was needed. The visions made clear the manipulation that had followed. The gift of dragon pieces. When the visions ended, a heavy silence settled over the chamber, and the guilt and shame on Rias's face were unmistakable. Even Rias's parents looked devastated, and Surzex struggled to process what he had seen. Great Red produced a set of glowing crimson objects and explained that they were dragon pieces similar in function to the evil pieces but resonating with draconic power. He explained that with these pieces, Issei could form his own group of allies. Issei felt the power of the pieces as they hovered before him and expressed quiet awe and gratitude. Great Red nodded solemnly and advised him to use them well, telling him that his path was now his own. With that, the dragon vanished, leaving a stunned and silent chamber behind. The air in the meeting chamber remained heavy with silence. Issei stood with the dragon pieces before him, the ancient power humming as if urging him forward. Rias avoided his gaze, pale and trembling as the full weight of her actions and the revealed truth settled upon her. Sona and Koneko moved closer to Issei as steady support. They had been the ones to stand by him through the turmoil, and Issei felt gratitude and affection for their loyalty. Surzex, who had been silent since seeing the memories, finally spoke with a voice heavy with emotion. He admitted he did not know how to respond to what he had witnessed and apologized for having trusted Rias's words without question. He told Rias that she needed to understand the gravity of what had happened. Rias looked up at her brother, tears welling in her eyes, and explained that she had not intended for things to escalate so far. She confessed that she had feared losing Issei and had hoped that making him stay would restore normalcy. Issei responded calmly, with a sadness underlining his words, explaining that she had not lost him because of someone else but because she had been unable to trust him. Issei told Rias that trying to control him was not love, and Rias winced at his words as guilt settled deeper into her heart. The room remained tense while the other parents watched the exchange quietly, weighing the situation in their minds. Lord Gremory, who had been silent through most of the ordeal, finally spoke with a deep, measured voice and offered his sincerest apologies to Issei for the misunderstandings and manipulations that had caused him suffering. Issei nodded, his face showing no malice or anger, and explained that he needed to move forward. Lady Gremory shifted uncomfortably and asked what he meant. Sona stepped forward to stand beside Issei and declared that he had been wronged and deserved a chance to build a new life on his own terms. Koneko added in her soft yet firm way that they would not leave him alone anymore. Issei took a deep breath and made clear that he would not stay bound by the past. He had been loyal for a long time, but now he needed to choose his own path. He stepped forward and held up the dragon pieces, feeling the immense power surging through them. He went on to say that he had no intention of abandoning those who stood with him, but he would no longer be a pawn in anyone else's game. He explained that he had his own pieces now and intended to forge his own destiny. Issei announced who would stand with him as his family and companions. Sona and Koneko had been with him through everything, and together they had decided to be close companions and travel the world as a unit. A collective gasp rippled through the room, especially from the Gremory family. Rias looked as though she had been struck, her wide eyes filling with disbelief as she asked if he really meant to leave with them. Issei's gaze softened but remained resolute as he confirmed that he was leaving and could not stay tied to the past any longer. Sona explained calmly that this was the best choice and that Issei had the right to live freely and make his own decisions. Koneko slipped her small hand into Issei's as a sign of their commitment and affirmed that they would be there for him, always. Lord and Lady Gremory exchanged glances, both unsure how to react to the sudden shift. Sona's parents watched with quiet pride, understanding that their daughter had chosen to stand beside someone she respected and cared for. Lord Gremory cleared his throat, expressed sadness at Issei's departure, and acknowledged that he understood Issei must do what was best for himself. He expressed the hope that in time Rias could come to terms with what had happened. Rias lowered her head, tears clinging to her eyelashes. The weight of her actions was something she would have to bear on her own. As the meeting wound down, Issei, Sona, and Koneko stepped outside the grand hall together. The weight of the past began to lift from Issei's shoulders. He felt free for the first time in a long while, no longer bound by the expectations or manipulations of others. With Koneko and Sona at his side, he was ready to chart a new course. He glanced at the dragon pieces resting in his hand, their crimson glow pulsing gently, and understood that this was only the beginning of his journey as a dragon. Issei asked where they should go first. Sona smirked and suggested anywhere but there, and Koneko nodded, saying that as long as they were together, that would be enough. Issei chuckled, feeling a newfound warmth in his chest, and expressed that they should go make their own story. The three of them walked away from the past, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Stepping into the open air, Issei watched the sky painted in orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sunset marked a new chapter in his life, a break from manipulations, deceit, and heartache. Sona stood beside him, adjusting her glasses with a look of purpose, and Koneko kept a quiet, steady presence with her hands still holding his. The silence between them was comfortable, a quiet acknowledgement of the gravity of what had just occurred. Issei felt the enormity of what lay ahead, a wide world full of possibilities and the knowledge that he was leaving behind the life he had known. He had no attachments tying him to Kuo or the old loyalties that had once defined him. Sona told him not to worry and reminded him that this was his chance to shape his own future, and that they were with him no matter what. Koneko gave a firm nod and promised that they would protect each other. Issei looked between the two of them, warmth swelling in his chest, and acknowledged that he knew and felt grateful. Issei admitted that he did not know what he would have done without Sona and Koneko. For so long, he had been driven by loyalty to Rias and the Gremory household, but now he realized that loyalty needed to be earned, not demanded. Sona and Koneko had stood by him when others had faltered, and that meant more to him than he could express. The first step forward. As the trio wandered through the quiet streets of Kuo, Issei's thoughts drifted back to the dragon pieces. He could feel their subtle power pulsing against his side like a heartbeat synchronized with his own. Great Red had left him with an incredible responsibility and an even greater opportunity, the power to turn others into dragons and to create a new family that was his own, not one dictated by someone else's rules. Issei pulled out a dragon piece and examined it in the dimming light, thinking that they should start by learning more about the artifacts and their lore. Sona nodded, her tactical mind already at work and suggesting places where they might find answers, such as the Dragon King's domain or ancient dragons with deeper insight. Issei grinned and said that the world was full of dragons and that they would find what they were looking for. Koneko looked up with seriousness in her amber eyes and promised that they would protect him always. A new bond. As they continued their walk, the trio's bond only grew stronger. Issei's protectiveness had always been a part of him, but this felt different. Sona and Koneko were not just friends but partners who had chosen to stand by him. He watched Sona's confident stride and sharp intellect and admired her calm demeanor and unshakable support. He remembered how she had never doubted him, even when everything seemed to be against him. He also thought of Koneko, who had always been quiet and reserved but had a heart as fierce as any dragon. Her past struggles had made her stronger, and her presence was a reminder that no one had to walk alone. Issei smiled to himself and reflected that they were really something special. Sona responded with a teasing smirk and a reminder that he should already know that. Koneko gave a rare smile and affirmed that they were his family now. The word family swelled in Issei's chest. Trust, loyalty, and mutual respect had formed a new bond, and with Sona and Koneko by his side he felt ready to face anything. Looking ahead, the future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, that uncertainty excited Issei rather than frightened him. There were countless places to explore, battles to fight, and mysteries to uncover, and this time he would do it on his terms. No more manipulation, no more being used as a pawn. He was his own person now, and he had the power of the dragons to back him. As the sun dipped below the horizon and twilight settled over the town, Issei turned to Sona and Koneko with a grin and wondered aloud where they should go first. Sona suggested starting with the Dragon King's domain, reasoning that if anyone knew about the pieces it would be him. Koneko nodded and indicated that they should go. With that, the trio set off into the night, leaving behind the shadows of their past and stepping into a future filled with possibilities. Night had fallen over a small, ravaged town, leaving it shrouded in darkness except for the glow of lingering fires from homes and shops that had once been the pride of the place. Now it lay in ruins after the Chaos Brigade's reign of terror. Smoke rose into the sky, and the air carried the scent of smoke and ash. The only sounds were distant cries and the unsettling laughter of the soldiers who had brought devastation. Sona adjusted her glasses and surveyed the scene with a cold, analytical gaze, noting that the town had been overrun and that they would need to move carefully because enemies could be hiding anywhere. Koneko closed her eyes briefly and let her senses stretch out, detecting movement up ahead and a strong concentration of energy. Issei walked slightly ahead, clenching his fists as the boosted gear at his side pulsed faintly with power in response to his resolve. He vowed that the Chaos Brigade had hurt too many people and that he would not let them get away with it. The trio pressed deeper into the ruined town, the flickering flames casting long shadows across broken streets. Not long after, they came upon a confrontation. Two identical young women twins were locked in combat against a squad of Chaos Brigade soldiers. Their wings, a striking mix of crimson and jet black feathers, flared as they fought, their determination clear despite being heavily outnumbered. The soldiers closed in with cruel grins. Sona observed that the twins were hybrids, noting the dragonic energy mixed with the distinct aura of fallen angels. Koneko added that the twins were strong but at risk of being overwhelmed if they did not intervene. Issei's eyes focused on the twins, memories of his own solitary struggles fueling his decision to help. He tightened his grip on the boosted gear and ordered them to save the twins. Koneko was the first to move, her small form a blur as she dashed forward. With remarkable speed she struck one of the soldiers, sending him reeling and slumping against a wall, dazed. Sona followed immediately, weaving precise gestures in the air to cast binding spells that immobilized several soldiers. Arcane circles appeared beneath their feet and bands of shimmering energy held them in place. Sona conveyed that the immediate threat had been contained. Issei closed the distance with the boosted gear glowing brighter as he activated its power. He unleashed a concentrated surge of energy that knocked the remaining attackers off balance and cleared space around the twins without lingering harm. The twins, freed from immediate danger, steadied themselves and prepared to continue fighting if needed, but the arrival of Issei, Sona, and Koneko had turned the tide. The familiar voice of Drake echoed in Issei's mind, amplifying his strength. With a powerful swing of his fist, he slammed into the ground and sent shockwaves through the street. The remaining soldiers were knocked off their feet, disoriented and unable to defend themselves. The twins, battered and bruised, looked up in shock as the tide of the battle turned. The silver-haired twin, her wings tattered but still holding strong, struggled to catch her breath and asked who they were, her voice shaking from exhaustion and disbelief. Issei stepped forward, his face calm yet filled with resolve, and told them that they were there to help and that they were safe now. The battle ended swiftly after that. With Issei, Sona, and Koneko intervening, the Chaos Brigade soldiers were either defeated or driven off. The town was far from saved. It would take months, if not years, to recover from the destruction, but at least the immediate threat had been neutralized. The twins sat down on a broken stone bench to catch their breath. Both had sustained injuries, though none were life-threatening. Their hybrid forms were rare half-dragon and half-fallen angel, a combination that made them dangerous and highly coveted by those who sought power, like the Chaos Brigade. Issei walked up and offered a bottle of water he had pulled from his bag, asking if they were all right. The silver-haired twin took the bottle gratefully, her crimson eyes softening. She introduced herself as Althea and indicated her sister, who had darker silver hair and an identical build, as Nyx. Nyx, still wary but relieved, nodded and explained that they had been running for days because the Chaos Brigade had been chasing them and wanted to use them. Sona, ever the tactician, crossed her arms and asked why the brigade had pursued them so relentlessly. Althea answered that their parents had been powerful, one a dragon lord and the other a fallen angel from a prestigious line, and that the brigade intended to unlock their full potential to use them as weapons. Issei listened with a clenched heart. He understood what it meant to be hunted and used. He told them they did not have to run anymore and that they were safe with him. Nyx looked up, her eyes filled with both hope and suspicion, and asked why he would help them when he did not know them. Issei smiled genuinely and explained that he had been where they were alone, hunted, used, and that he had found people who helped him. He said that now he wanted to help others too. As night deepened, the group gathered around a small fire. The atmosphere was calmer, but the weight of what had happened lingered. The twins were exhausted physically and emotionally, but a sense of hope began to flicker in their hearts. Sona warned that the Chaos Brigade would not stop coming for them and stated that the twins needed more than protection. They needed power and a way to fight back. Nyx clenched her fists and said they did not want to keep running and that they wanted to fight back, asking if Issei could help them. Issei paused, glanced at Sona and Koneko for their silent agreement, and then reached into his pocket to feel the dragon pieces that Great Red had given him. The pieces pulsed with warm energy. He explained that he was building a team, a family of dragons, and that if they were willing to stand with him, he would give them the strength to fight so they would not have to run anymore. Althea and Nyx exchanged a look and then nodded to accept. Later, Issei stood before the twins holding two glowing rook dragon pieces infused with Great Red's power. He explained that the pieces would make them stronger and turn them into dragons like him, but only if they were ready for the responsibility that came with that power. Althea and Nyx nodded, resolute and ready. Issei focused and channeled the energy of the pieces into the twins. A brilliant light engulfed them and their forms shimmered as the dragon pieces took effect. The power surged through their veins, amplifying their strength. Their wings expanded, glimmering with crimson and black hues, and their auras flared with newfound intensity. When the light faded, Althea and Nyx stood transformed. Their draconic features were more pronounced and stronger. They were no longer just hybrids but dragons. Koneko observed from the side and nodded in approval, commenting that they were strong now and would make good rooks. Issei smiled as the bond between them solidified and welcomed them to the team. Althea flexed her wings and promised that they would not let him down, while Nyx pledged to fight with him no matter what. Issei felt pride as his new team, his new family grew, confident that with Althea and Nyx by his side they could face whatever came next. They had not traveled far from the town when a sharp gust of wind carried the chilling sound of flapping wings, a clear sign they were not alone. The remnants of the Cow's brigade, angered by their earlier defeat, were returning with reinforcements. The once quiet forest outside the town filled with the flicker of magical energy and the faint shimmer of teleportation circles. Issei sensed the shift in the air before he saw them and noted that they were back, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the trilene and his boosted gear glowing faintly in readiness. Sona stepped forward, her stance commanding, and observed that the brigade would not stop until they were captured or killed but that their enemies had underestimated them. Koneko clenched her fists and vowed that they would not win this time. Althea and Nyx, still adjusting to their dragon forms, felt the weight of the moment. Their wings twitched with anticipation and their eyes gleamed with the draconic strength now coursing through them. Althea glanced at Issei and affirmed that they were ready to fight and would not run again. Issei nodded, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. The Cow's brigade would learn the hard way that they had crossed the wrong people. The Cow's brigade soldiers emerged from the shadows in far greater numbers than before. At the forefront stood a tall man in dark armor, his crimson eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Behind him, rows of soldiers bristled with dark magic and weapons at the ready. The leader sneered at Issei and his group, calling them pathetic and saying they should have stayed hidden. Issei's gaze hardened as the red gauntlet on his arm glowed brighter with the boosted gear. He warned that attacking innocent people had been a mistake and that they would now pay for it. Without waiting for a response, the battle erupted in a storm of magic and steel. Koneko moved first, her speed and strength unmatched as she cut through the enemy lines in a rapid, precise display of skill. Her fists connected with clean, forceful blows that sent foes tumbling and incapacitated attackers with swift uppercuts, and she muttered that they were too slow as she continued to dodge and counter. Sona stood at the center of the field, coordinating the fight with calm authority. She formed barriers of light to protect her allies and sent controlled bursts of energy to neutralize multiple opponents. She urged everyone to stay focused and maintained a composed presence amidst the chaos. Althea and Nyx, embracing their new powers, fought in close harmony. Their wings carved through the air as they launched coordinated assaults, blending draconic force and fallen angel techniques in a fluid, aerial choreography. Althea produced streams of blazing fire while Nyx called down dark lightning. Nyx declared with fierce determination that they would not be captured again as she unleashed a surge of power. Issei became a whirlwind of energy at the heart of the fight. The boosted gear amplified with each strike, and Drake's voice in his mind encouraged him to push further. Issei's fists struck with overwhelming momentum, each attack sending shockwaves through the battlefield and scattering enemy ranks like ragdolls. He roared that they were done and delivered a decisive blow that sent the leader tumbling into the trees, leaving him unconscious. When the last of the Cow's brigade forces either lay defeated or had fled, the battlefield fell into a tense silence. The group stood victorious, though the weight of the conflict still lingered. Koneko wiped her hands, her expression stoic as ever, and observed that their enemies would think twice before attacking again. Sona adjusted her glasses and noted that this was not the end and that the brigade would regroup and come back stronger. Issei acknowledged her warning but allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction at the victory. Issei checked on Althea and Nyx as they caught their breath and asked how they were feeling. Althea offered a faint smile and said they felt stronger and that they owed him for rescuing them. Nyx nodded in agreement and expressed that they would not forget his help. Issei insisted they owed him nothing and emphasized that they were a team now who would fight together. A sense of camaraderie settled over the group as they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the ruined town. As they walked away, Issei could not shake the feeling that a larger threat loomed, and he knew they would need to be ready for whatever came next. The group's journey led them to a small village deep within a forest. The village was quiet, its streets empty and homes showing signs of neglect. It was clear the villagers had abandoned it long ago, likely because of repeated raids. Despite the eerie silence, the place offered a safe spot for them to regroup and plan. Issei stood by a crumbled fountain in the center of the village, lost in thought and clenching his fists as he recalled the recent chaos and destruction. He admitted to himself that the Cows Brigade would not stop and that they would keep coming until everything he cared about was threatened. Sona approached with a calm but concerned demeanor and urged preparation, saying they needed allies and that this battle could not be won alone. Koneko, sitting on the fountain's edge, agreed and pointed out that the brigade's numbers made it too big to face alone, even with Issei's strength. Althea and Nyx exchanged a glance and stepped forward. Althea explained that they might know someone who could help. Before they had been captured, they had heard of a hidden group of dragons and fallen angels who had banded together against the Cows Brigade. These allies were in hiding but might be willing to join their cause. Issei's eyes lit with hope and determination at the possibility of finding willing fighters, and he resolved that if they were willing, they would seek them out. Their journey to find the rumored group proved difficult, winding through dense forests, rocky terrain, and hidden valleys. Along the way, remnants of the Cows Brigade appeared, but teamwork and growing strength allowed Issei's team to fend off each threat. As they traveled, the bond within the group strengthened. Sona's strategic mind and leadership complemented Koneko's relentless combat ability, while Althea and Nyx's combined dragon and fallen angel powers added a new dynamic that made them increasingly formidable. After several days, they reached a hidden cave concealed by a waterfall. Althea and Nyx led the way, their confidence rising as they entered. Inside, the air felt charged with power and the glow of dragon flame lit the cavern walls. Wings echoed in the distance until a tall figure emerged from the shadows, a dragon-fallen angel hybrid with golden scales and radiant black wings. He scanned the group with piercing blue eyes and issued a low growl, demanding to know who dared enter their sanctuary. Issei stepped forward without flinching and explained that they had come to ask for help against the Cows Brigade, which was targeting anyone who opposed them. The hybrid narrowed his eyes and recognized Althea and Nyx, commenting that he had thought they were lost. Nyx approached and stated that they had been captured but were rescued by Issei, crediting him for their presence. The hybrid studied Issei for a long moment and then acknowledged that Issei had proven his strength, though he reminded them that trust was not earned easily. Kale told them that if they wanted his group's help, they would have to prove they were worthy. The Trial of Fire. The hybrid who introduced himself as Kale led the group deeper into the cave to a massive underground chamber. The air was thick with heat, and molten lava bubbled in pools scattered across the floor. Kale indicated a glowing circle in the center of the chamber and explained that anyone who wished to earn their allegiance had to pass the Trial of Fire, a test of strength, resolve, and trust. Issei glanced at his team with determination and signaled that they would accept the challenge. Kale made it clear that the trial was meant for the leader alone. Sona objected that they fought as a team, but Kale insisted that a leader must prove they could endure adversity alone to truly lead others. Issei nodded and stepped into the circle without hesitation. As the trial began, the chamber filled with roaring flames and spectral dragons that shimmered with fire and light. They attacked Issei relentlessly, testing his strength and resilience. Drake's voice echoed in his mind, urging him forward and reinforcing a determination not to lose. The trial probed his thoughts as well as his body, forcing him to confront memories of betrayal, pain, and loss. Each time doubt surfaced, he pushed through, his resolve holding firm. When the flames finally subsided, Issei stood in the center of the circle, battered but unbroken. Kale stepped forward with a look of respect and acknowledged that Issei had proven himself and that they would fight alongside him. A group of hybrids emerged from the shadows, far more numerous than Issei had expected, each radiating power and determination that mirrored his own. As they left the cave, Issei felt a renewed sense of purpose. With his team growing stronger and new allies at his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The calm before the storm. The night air carried the lingering scent of battle ash and smoke, and the village that Issei and his team had liberated from the Cows Brigade still bore the scars of conflict. Buildings lay in ruin, streets were littered with debris, and survivors watched cautiously from hiding places. For many, the nightmare was finally over. For Issei, it felt like the beginning of something larger. He stood in the village square, watching a bonfire the villagers had lit in celebration, while the weight of his responsibilities settled on him. Drake's voice rumbled in his mind, reminding him that this was only the start. Issei sighed and acknowledged that he knew. Sona, Koneko, and the newly rescued twin dragon fallen angel hybrids, Althea and Nyx, stood nearby, faces warmed by the firelight. Despite their exhaustion, none of them had let their guard down. Kale, the golden-scaled dragon warrior who had protected the twins, stood with his arms crossed and his piercing gaze fixed on Issei. Kale praised Issei's performance but questioned whether he truly understood what he had become. Issei looked puzzled when Kale pointed out that, while Issei called himself the Red Dragon Emperor and wielded unimaginable power, he still fought like a human, reacting with brute force rather than embracing what it meant to be a dragon. Issei clenched his fists, asking what Kale meant. Althea said that Issei was still holding back and would never reach his true potential until he understood his power. Nyx added that warriors who relied solely on raw strength often burned out quickly. Sona emphasized the need to train together so they could function as a unit against the Cow's Brigade and other threats. Koneko stressed the importance of building trust and learning to move as one. Kale approved and proposed that they begin training. Trial by fire, the training begins. The next morning, as sunlight stretched across the sky, their training commenced. Combat drills and team synergy. The ruined village became their battlefield. Issei engaged Kale in one-on-one combat to test raw strength against the seasoned dragon warrior's calculated techniques. Kale's golden claws cut through the air with blinding speed, forcing Issei to dodge, counter, and anticipate several steps ahead. Mistakes were met with swift punishment. Koneko and Nyx, both speed-based fighters, moved like blurs as they clashed in an intense display of precision and power. Every strike and block was executed with focus, neither giving the other much space. Sona and Althea tested their magical abilities against each other. Sona's precise water and wind spells met Althea's draconic flames, and the village square became a storm of fire and mist as their powers collided, sending dust and debris skittering. The training continued for hours, each session more demanding than the last. By nightfall they collapsed around the fire pit, sore and winded but unbroken in spirit. Issei stared up at the stars, acknowledging how intense the day had been, and Kale approved, reminding him that strength did not come easily. The trial of the true dragon. As the others rested, Kale signaled for Issei to follow him. They walked away from the village toward an ancient stone circle at the base of a nearby mountain. Kale told Issei that potential alone was worthless and that he would have to undergo the trial of the true dragon, a test of soul and spirit that, if survived, would awaken power beyond anything he had known. Issei took a steadying breath and declared his readiness. Kale activated the ritual, and the world around Issei vanished. The realm of shadows and fire. Issei found himself in an endless void where the air was heavy with the echoes of ancient dragons. The ground felt like cracked molten glass beneath his feet. From the darkness, a colossal dragon-vampire hybrid emerged, her deep crimson scales and golden eyes cutting through the void with a raw, untamed presence. She introduced herself as Valeriana. Valeriana told him that she had been waiting for him to awaken her. Issei's eyes widened in surprise as he asked whether she meant to be awakened. Valeriana extended a claw, and memories of ancient battles flashed through Issei's mind, visions of dragons ruling kingdoms and wars that had reshaped the world. Valeriana explained that he was not merely a wielder of dragon power but was meant to be a king. The world around him erupted in golden fire. A surge of power rushed through Issei's veins, his body trembling as his essence shifted. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in the real world, but something had changed. His aura had shifted, his eyes glowed gold, and his scales had darkened, becoming sharper and more defined. Kale watched with approval and told him that he had taken his first step toward true dragonhood. Sona and Koneko sensed the change and exchanged glances. Sona observed that Issei had changed, and Koneko noted that he was stronger and that she could feel it. Issei clenched his fists, feeling the immense energy coursing through him and thinking that this was only the beginning. Kale smirked and warned him to prepare because the real battle was yet to come. A village awakens. 3 days had passed since the night the valley town had been freed from the Cow's Brigade's chokehold. It had rained steadily all night, and now the streets were damp, reflecting the pale morning sunlight like shards of broken glass across the cobblestones. The village square, once silent and lifeless, was alive again. Blackened ruins had been replaced by freshly laid stone and wooden scaffolding. The smell of newly baked bread mingled with the faint scent of charred timber still lingering in the air. Somewhere, a lute played a slow, tentative tune, and the voices of merchants hawking their goods floated through the mist. From the upstairs window of the rebuilt tavern, Issei leaned on the sill, watching it all. His red eyes, glowing faintly from his bond with Valeriana, swept over the scene. He thought that it was not much, but it was a start, and that people were smiling again. Behind him, the low hum of conversation mixed with the crackle of the fireplace. His team, still small but already dangerous, was gathered around a massive oak table, the surface buried beneath rolled-up maps, hand-scribbled notes, and enchanted crystals pulsing faintly with detection spells. Planning the next move. Sona sat at the head of the table, posture straight and unyielding. She had organized the maps into a precise fan across the table, each one marked with red ink where brigade activity had been confirmed. She tapped a mountainous region inked in black and silver and identified the Blackridge sector as containing multiple Cows Brigade outposts, warning that if they were left unchecked they would regroup and threaten the village again. Koneko, sitting sideways in her chair with her chin resting on one knee, considered the map and agreed that they should hunt the brigade before they had the chance to strike again. Althea, lounging with her boots up and twirling a dagger, pointed out that the enemy would expect them and that an easy fight would be unlikely. Nyx, standing near the window with wings partially unfurled and faint sparks of lightning tracing the dark feathers, smirked and said she would like to see the enemy's confidence shatter. Kale moved closer, the torchlight dancing over the crimson and gold scales along his jawline, and advised that they break the brigade's strongest position, first cut off the head of the serpent and the rest would scatter. Issei laid his hand on the largest red X on the Blackridge map and identified Fortress Dravik, built into the tallest peak and shielded by magic and stone. He stated that if they took it, they would cripple the brigade's control over the entire sector. He reminded the team that the enemy would not fight fair, and neither would they. The road to Blackridge. They set out at first light. The trail wound through mist-shrouded forests and steep, jagged valleys where the sound of rushing rivers echoed like distant drums. Birds scattered at their passing, startled by the heavy beat of Kale's armored boots and the low hum of Sona's protective wards. The weather grew colder as they climbed. Pines thinned, replaced by wind-scoured rock and the distant glare of snowfields. The air carried the sharp bite of winter, and Issei could see his breath plume in the air. Nyx scouted ahead, occasionally vanishing into the clouds before swooping back to report on the terrain. Althea kept pace with Koneko, trading playful jabs that earned only deadpan responses from the white-haired queen. Sona rode within a shimmering carriage of magic, an elegant construct shaped from light and reinforced with runic steel, pulled by conjured steeds of elemental energy. Kale brought up the rear, his presence an unspoken shield for the group. The canyon ambush. The road narrowed into a canyon, the stone walls rising high and tight around them, leaving the path in cold shadow. Issei's steps slowed. The quiet felt wrong. Kaneko's ears twitched as she warned that something was wrong. A faint clatter of stone echoed above them as figures emerged from the cliff faces, dozens cloaked in black steel, their insignia a coiled serpent devouring a dragon's skull. Their weapons shimmered with the sheen of cursed enchantments. The masked, broad-shouldered leader stepped forward and declared that Issei Hyoudou's interference would end there. Issei did not flinch and replied that he had been about to say the same thing. The battle in the canyon. The first strike came from above, a spear of black fire screaming through the air. Issei moved before anyone else, his gauntlet flaring gold. He intercepted the spear mid-flight, the cursed flames hissing harmlessly against the barrier of his dragon gear before he crushed it into dust. Issei ordered the team to scatter. Koneko became a blur, her enhanced speed allowing her to appear behind an enemy mage before they could react. She struck quickly and incapacitated them. Sona extended her hand, calling forth a swirling wall of water that intercepted a rain of cursed arrows and froze into jagged ice, which she then sent back at the archers. Nyx dove from above, lightning exploding from her wings and chaining between foes, knocking several out of the fight with dazzling electric bursts. Althea landed beside her sister, inhaled deeply, and released a stream of molten gold flame, the heat bathing the canyon in an intense, radiant glow. The clash unfolded like a choreographed display of power-bright bursts of elemental energy, sweeping strikes, and swift, precise maneuvers. The brigade soldiers, overwhelmed by coordinated teamwork and overwhelming force, began to fall back in disarray as the team pressed their advantage. Kale tore into the front line, his clawed gauntlets rending steel shields as though they were parchment. The masked leader tried to fall back, but Issei appeared before him, Issei's aura pressing down like a mountain. Issei demanded the fortress's location. The man hesitated, defiance in his stance, but the pressure broke him. He replied raggedly that it stood at the tallest peak, called Dravik's Maw, and tried to protest further, but Issei's glare silenced him. Issei vowed they would see. By nightfall, they stood at the base of the mountain. The fortress was carved into the sheer cliff, its black stone nearly indistinguishable from the mountain itself. Massive golems of obsidian and dragon bone guarded the gates, their eyes burning with a ghostly light. Sona observed that the constructs were immune to conventional strikes and suggested they would have to dismantle the wards. Issei cracked his neck, a grin, spreading, and suggested they get creative. They set about breaking the gate. Sona summoned a sphere of water so dense it warped the air, using it to absorb the golem's fire before shattering it into freezing shards. Nyx and Althea combined their powers, lightning superheating Althea's flames until the stone under the golem's feet fractured violently. Kale exploited those fractures, tearing entire chunks of stone away with brute force. Koneko slipped through a gap in the wall and disabled the gate's internal locking runes. Issei stepped forward with golden energy swirling around him. Issei unleashed a dragon burst so intense it vaporized the gates, leaving molten edges cooling on the ground. The fortress fell chamber by chamber, the air heavy with the scent of burning oil and crushed stone. They reached the war room, a massive chamber filled with maps, coded scrolls, and stolen magical artifacts. Issei slammed his gauntlet fist on the table, scattering enemy plans, and declared that this was just the beginning. One fortress down, many more to go. Kale stood at his side and agreed that they would keep moving. This was the first victory of many. As the team gathered in the flickering light, their bond solidified. They were no longer merely allies. They had become the dragon's vanguard.